GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki. And look who's back, Patrick Christys, on your TV, radio and online. We're here until midday, bringing you the day's top stories, discussions with expert guests and our views as well.
Yes, well, hello, people. It is indeed great to be back. I have missed you, but we've got an absolute cracker of a show coming your way. And we'd love to hear your views as well, of course. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Shortly, I'm going to be talking about why we only seem to care about foreign borders and not our own. But first, here's your latest headlines.
A very good morning to you. It's just gone 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Russian Defence Ministry says it's returning some troops from the Ukrainian border. That is according to local media. In a statement published by the Russian news agency Interfax, the Defence Ministry also said the military is continuing exercise in a number of other areas. In Britain, the Prime Minister is going to lead a Cobra emergency meeting later today after speaking with US President Joe Biden last night. The two leaders made public their view that Western allies should stay united in the face of Russian threats. The former UK ambassador, Sir Mark Lyle-Grant, told GB News there is still scope for diplomacy.
And the longer that there isn't an invasion, as it were, I think the better the chances that there might be a diplomatic solution to this current crisis. We are entering, though, a very sensitive window because the Beijing Olympics are coming to a close at the end of the week. The Belarus-Russian military exercises are coming to a close. And the Russians do have all the necessary troops, but also logistical backup for an invasion if they wish to take that course.
The number of UK workers in formal employment rose again at the beginning of this year. The Office for National Statistics said the number of UK workers in formal employment rose by 108,000 between December and January. Salaries rose in the last quarter, but they continued to lag behind inflation, which is at a near 30-year high. Northern Ireland's remaining coronavirus restrictions will be lifted and replaced instead with guidance from today. The rules requiring, therefore, face masks in public places and the need to show COVID certificates for nightclubs will be dropped. The country's health minister will make an order revoking the rules later on today. People in Wales will receive extra support to help manage the cost of living crisis. The Welsh Government says they're going above and beyond by offering a package, including a £150 cost of living payment and an extra £200 for low-income households next winter. Wales's finance minister says the government is more than doubling the equivalent support provided by the UK government. Immigration rules on care worker jobs have been relaxed. The profession of care worker has now been added to the government's list of occupation shortages. Well, this list is designed to help migrants get work visas to fill jobs where there are significant staffing gaps. The social care sector has struggled to attract and retain staff. Well, tennis star Novak Djokovic says he will not defend his Wimbledon or French Open titles if the tournaments require mandatory vaccination for competitors. Speaking to the BBC, he said it was a price he was willing to pay and that he prioritised decision-making on his body over a trophy. The 34-year-old who isn't vaccinated against COVID-19 distanced himself from the anti-vax movement and said he'd had vaccinations as a child. A senior officer admits racism is a problem in the Metropolitan Police. The force's Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Bas Javid, says people who have racist views are working in the Met. He said the organisation itself is not racist and people are working hard to root out the problem. The government has outlined details over plans to protect leaseholders from cladding costs. They want developers and manufacturers to pay for replacing dangerous cladding in order to protect renters. If they don't address and pay to rectify cladding safety issues, well, the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities says they could be prevented from building in the future. A study has found potentially toxic levels of pharmaceutical drugs in a quarter of rivers across the world. It's the National Academy of Sciences, and they surveyed more than 1,000 sites, including the Thames in London and the Amazon in Brazil. Well, the research measured the presence of 61 pharmaceuticals that pose a risk to freshwater habitats and wildlife. One of the developers of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine will collect her damehood today. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert will receive the honour at Windsor Castle for her services to science and to public health. The jab's been used by more than 2.5 billion people in over 170 countries. Bristol Zoo Gardens in Clifton will shut its doors for good in September, having been open since 1836. They've been struggling with a lack of visitors over recent years. All of the animals will move to a wildlife park in South Gloucestershire. Over the years, it's helped save 175 species from extinction through its conservation programmes. You're now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki. And after a couple of weeks in the sun, Patrick Christys is back. If you can't tell us apart, that's because he's been soaking in the sun. Anyway, we're away, ladies and gentlemen. We're on your TV, radio and online this morning, here until midday, giving you the biggest stories, our opinions and, of course, hearing what you think as well. So here's what's on the menu.
Yes, the Prime Minister is set to host an emergency Cobra meeting later today as global leaders try to find a solution to Russia's potential invasion of Ukraine. Our Home and Security editor, the one and only Mark White, will be bringing us the latest on this diplomatic row. We'll bring you the story of Brits trying to flee Ukraine as well.
Yes, and the so-called big squeeze continues to pinch the nation's pocket as petrol and diesel prices reach record highs. We'll discuss why this is with our expert guest and ask when we can expect prices to return to affordable levels.
Never. Anyway, but it's not all doom and gloom, ladies and gents. GB News' favourite natural scientist, the one and only Dr. Christian Dunn, will give us some good news about rewilding projects across the UK, and we, crucially, will be showing you some very cute pictures of hedgehogs.
Yes, and most importantly, we'll be looking through your views, so get them coming in to our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on the prospect of a Russian invasion of Ukraine and the need for strong borders.
I don't think the West cares anymore about national sovereignty, independence or strong borders. That is an absolute disgrace and a major reason why Vladimir Putin is trying it on over Ukraine. There's something incredibly galling about the idea that NATO might be prepared to go to war with Russia to protect Ukraine's geographical and political independence. NATO includes countries like Justin Trudeau's Canada, Joe Biden's America, Olaf Scholz's Germany. You know him, Mr. EU. He loves an open border, this guy, doesn't he? But yet, when it comes to Ukraine, their national sovereignty is something worth protecting. Borders have suddenly become important. The fact is that many Western leaders care more about foreign borders than their own. I think Ukraine's territorial integrity is very important and something that is worth protecting. And I think a Russian incursion would be a very bad thing. But what I'm also saying is that these so-called ultra-liberals can't have it both ways. They can't possibly call for open borders, the unabated flow of illegal immigrants into their countries, and a push for a big globalist agenda, while simultaneously, at the same time, potentially about to send some of their citizens to fight and die to protect the geographical integrity of Ukraine. I can't help but feel like the West is eating itself alive, like it's engaging in a mass act of political suicide. A lot of these woke world leaders, especially in Europe, talk about tolerance, inclusivity, women's rights, while waving a rainbow flag. And yet they are content for millions of people to enter their nations illegally from countries where, frankly, gay people are often thrown off buildings and women don't have any rights at all. Of course, in classic arrogant liberal fashion, the plan is presumably to re-educate these people, to show them the light. Well, it's not exactly working particularly well so far, is it? Certainly not if you happen to be a young German woman at a New Year's Eve celebration. What must Putin think when he looks at the West now? Our Prime Minister might be sacked because of some cheese and wine. I'm absolutely convinced that the only reason Joe Biden hasn't met with Vladimir Putin in a neutral location is because his handlers don't think he's fit to fly anymore. You'd have thought the US president would be taking a much more hands-on approach. After all, if there's anyone who knows a thing or two about Ukraine, it's the Biden family. And here's his deputy, Kamala Harris. What's her view on all of this, do we think? She strikes me as someone who's probably in the same camp as Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott, i.e., the Russians are right and this is all our fault. The EU is basically reliant on Putin's gas. What genius decided that was a good idea? Like I said, you reap what you sow. And I can't help but feel the Western world planted the seeds of its own demise a long time ago. And what has the full might of NATO actually prevented thus far? Yesterday, Ukraine announced that it might back down over joining, which is exactly what Putin wants. How weak does that make us look? The full might of this Western alliance just gives in to Putin. If China invaded Taiwan at the same time that Putin invaded Ukraine, we'd be screwed. We'd probably either have to let them have it or start threatening nuclear war, which would make us the bad guys, wouldn't it? Look, I think Ukraine's national sovereignty is important and it is worth defending, but I find it deeply hypocritical that many Western leaders, many members of NATO, care more about protecting foreign borders than they do about protecting their own. They care more about the national sovereignty of Ukraine than they do about their own. In fact, all too often, they actively tell their citizens that their own national sovereignty is a bad thing, that their own culture is backwards, that their own culture isn't worth defending, maybe even that they don't have any culture to defend in the first place. I personally find that attitude deeply offensive, and it's time that our leaders change, because otherwise the West will eat itself alive, and then there really won't be anything worth defending. Yes, well...
Back with a bang. Well, I think...
I tell you what, for a man who's been away for 2 weeks in the sun, I am not half-hearted here.
Yeah, I can see you are sweating. You have to maybe undo a button or something. But I think it's an interesting point you make. I mean, there are obviously very legitimate reasons to be extremely worried about a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine, not least, and this is something we'll be speaking about later, because of what you alluded to there about energy and gas, and actually it's been said already, this is partly why gas prices, you know, today it's come out that they're higher than ever before. When I say gas, I mean petrol. I'm not American. So there are legitimate reasons, and obviously we do want to avoid war. Of course, so, you know, I think that I'm not as harsh on some of the politicians, perhaps, for taking this as seriously as they're taking it.
No, there we go. I think we should take it seriously, but I just find it a bit hypocritical. Anyway, Peter Hitchens joins us now. Fantastic, the man, the myth, the legend. He's, of course, a journalist of note, an author, and a former foreign correspondent in Moscow during the last months of the Soviet Union and the early years of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter. Look, I am a little bit sick and tired of the Ukraine issue because it seems to be rumbling on for rather a long time. How do you feel about the attitude now that potentially some of our leaders view a foreign border as being worth defending more than their own?
Well, I don't think you should assume necessarily that this is, as far as the leadership of the supposed West is concerned, this is really about Ukraine very much. Ukraine has been used by people who seem to want to recreate trouble in Europe Ukraine has been used as a battering ram against Russia. There's no consideration in all this for the people or the economy or the governance of Ukraine, which could be one of the most prosperous and happy countries in Europe if only it were allowed to get on with building up its economy, getting rid of its appalling corruption, and developing a properly organized, democratic and free political system. As long as it's trapped in this position, where, as I say, it's simply used as a battering ram to smash against Russia by the new Cold War fanatics, then that won't happen, and it absolutely won't happen as long as a large chunk of Ukraine is semi-seceded. But you mustn't assume that the rhetoric is the same as the policy. In fact, it's probably the most unwise thing you can possibly do.
And so how do you we mentioned that you were obviously a journalist, I think in Moscow, actually. You've been, yes.
We've retired you.
Yes, sorry. But Peter, what do you make of this situation now? What do you think is going to happen going forward? Because, it's not all talk. We can say it's all talk, but there's a real danger, isn't there, that it won't just be all talk on the part of Putin?
Well, I suppose so, though. Think of this. Since 1945, aggressive war has been illegal under international law. You can't simply invade a neighbouring country. All kinds of terrible things will happen to you if you do, and rightly so. Though this rule doesn't apply to the United States, which is allowed to conduct aggressive wars when it feels like it. Everybody else is definitely subject to it, and Russia certainly is. So what would be the point in Putin invading Ukraine? He would, I particularly doubt that he has the military capacity to capture a large part of that country, but then he would have to hold it down against very considerable opposition, probably opposition which would be quite justifiably armed from abroad. So years and years and years of guerrilla fighting and urban warfare. For what purpose? As my friend Mary Dejevsky, who was, like me, a Moscow correspondent, a much better one than I was back in the 90s, has pointed out in a very interesting article in Spiked Online, the last thing Russia needs is more territory. It's got plenty of territory. That's not its problem. The problem is defending the territory that it has against the various threats that are made against it. There's a very complicated diplomacy here, but it's very simply expressed by Zbigniew Brzezinski some time ago in a book called The Grand Chessboard. Whoever possesses Ukraine diplomatically in modern Europe pretty much controls that part of the world. And before 2014, when the Ukrainian government was overthrown and replaced by Ukraine was not aligned. It was a neutral country. It didn't take sides in any of the questions of who supported in that part of the world. Since 2014, it has been increasingly aligned indirectly so far with the NATO bloc. If it becomes firmly aligned with it, then Russia basically faces a huge defeat. This is an enormous diplomatic and political game that's being played here. For very high stakes. The question is, why is anybody playing it? Everybody knows, who has any sense at all, that Russia exists. It is a country, a state, an economy. It has military power. It has interests. Why do people so constantly ignore those interests and treat them as if Russia doesn't count as a modern nation and as a pariah state? This is the way to war. But I think if Putin declared war on Ukraine and invaded it, he would establish beyond doubt that he was clinically insane. It would be a mad thing to do. It would do Russia nothing but harm and would lead to his own overthrow.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. And I just wonder, though, maybe a slightly bigger picture question, this really, about how weak the West looks at the moment. We're getting very bogged down with a lot of internal issues, a lot of unconscious bias going about, a lot of, leaders, frankly, that may not necessarily have the capacity to do the job, etc. Do you think we are eating ourselves alive a little bit in the West now?
Well, I take your point completely about the obsession with borders elsewhere and the failure to defend them at home, which is indeed an inconsistency, but it's not as inconsistent as it looks because they don't really care about the Ukrainian border either. It's something else that's bothering them. The question is, what is the purpose of Western policy? And the West, so-called, is extremely well armed because it contains the United States, which is a major military power. France is reasonably militarily competent. We are busy actually dismantling our armed forces. So quite why we're so enthusiastic about warlike stances at the moment, I'm not sure. But it's quite certain that in any contest between Russia and the United States in conventional warfare, Russia would lose. So there isn't really very much doubt about that. But the question which people are not asking is, why is this conflict even being pursued? What was the point of it? Why was it even necessary? In 1991, Russia, as it then became, gave up huge amounts of territory in Europe and Asia and asked in return only for a promise that NATO would not expand eastwards, a promise which was given by the politicians in the West at the time. And there are huge records in George Washington University in D.C., which show that this was definitely the case. And then we broke that pledge and gave Russia the impression that we'd formed a new alliance which was fundamentally anti-Russian, and that Russia would be excluded from all the bodies which govern life in Europe, whether it be the European Union or NATO, and pushed to one side. What was the purpose of this? A very, very wise statesman in both Russia and in the United States warned against it, particularly George Kennan, the architect of America's Cold War policy, came out of retirement to say it was a stupid mistake. And Yegor Gaidar, one of the most prominent liberal democratic politicians in Russia, actually went to see the Canadian ambassador, who was a friend in Moscow, to beg him to use his influence to stop this policy of NATO expansion, because it was so dangerous and because it would strengthen the militant nationalists in Russia who Gaidar opposed. Why did we ignore these fundamentally liberal, wise, experienced voices? And why did we go for this extraordinary policy of pushing ourselves eastwards and creating a conflict with Russia, which had no need to exist? It's been the most extraordinary episode. I watch it with a mixture of puzzlement and grief. But why have we made such a mess? I was ecstatic the day the Soviet Union fell. I was in Moscow that day. I drove through the town so exultant. I was singing hymns in my car. It was such a moment of joy. A terrible, terrible, disastrous thing had come to an end. We had one of the biggest opportunities in human history. And we spent the subsequent 30 years destroying that opportunity, while I have to say, sucking up to the Chinese, who rather than giving away territory and allowing some sort of freedom to flourish, massacred their own people in Tiananmen Square with total ruthlessness, which I have to say the Soviet Union could have done in 1989 to 91. And we reward them, and we punish Russia. Right? It's a bafflement to me. I really don't know what possesses people to pursue these ridiculous policies.
Peter, I could listen to you all day. I'm sure many people could as well.
You can if you want. Here I am.
I'm sure it's only a matter of time before you're on here yourself. But Peter, thank you very, very much. Peter Hitchens there, of course, just a man with infinite experience when it comes to this kind of stuff. And he was just referring to the latest goings on when it comes to Ukraine, Russia. Will it happen? Won't it happen? Why is it happening potentially? But there we go.
Yes, well, after the break, we're continuing our coverage of those tensions between Russia and Ukraine. And our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, will bring us his prediction on Boris Johnson's meeting with his Cobra crisis cabinet later. Can a diplomatic solution be found? Well, we'll be talking about after the break.
Hello, very good morning to you. A damp start out there this morning. Rain at times through the rest of the day, but eventually clearing away, albeit lingering in the south. And then a stormy rest of the week as the jet stream, powerful current of winds high in the atmosphere, picks up and spins up a number of storms. Storm Dudley coming through Wednesday night. Storm Eunice Friday. So it's the northern half of the UK with Storm Dudley that will be worst affected by the wind, and then the southern half affected by Storm Eunice on Friday. Pay close attention to Met Office weather warnings and forecasts. At first this morning, outbreaks of rain pushing into southern parts of the country and lingering for a time this afternoon with a strong breeze around the coast. It is going to feel unpleasant here. Elsewhere, brightening skies, some sunshine coming through, but further showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and these showers falling as snow over the hills. Feeling cold in the north, 5 or 6 Celsius for Scotland, 10 or 11 Celsius in the far south. Clearing skies very briefly this evening, and then overnight the next batch of wind and rain moves in from the west. A damp night for most. The far north of Scotland staying clear of the rain, and here a touch of frost is possible, 0 degrees for the likes of Aberdeen and Stornoway, but further south 8s, 9s for Cardiff, London, Southampton, but a damp and increasingly windy start to the day tomorrow. Gales are on exposed coasts in the south, but increasingly as the first area of rain moves away and the next batch of wet weather moves in for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern and Western England and Wales by the afternoon, attention as far as the winds are concerned moves north. And Storm Dudley by this stage is starting to approach Scotland, and as a result, well, it's across northern parts of the UK where widespread gales are expected overnight into Wednesday and Thursday. and risk of damaging or disruptive winds, especially for central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. An amber warning is in force.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, well, morning, everybody. It is 10:25. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki, right here on GB News, live on your TV and on your radio this morning.
Yes, now Prime Minister Boris Johnson will chair a meeting of the Crisis Cabinet, COBRA, today on the escalating situation in Ukraine. It comes as US intelligence officials assess that Russian forces will be in a position to invade their neighbour from as early as tomorrow.
Well, the new German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, will be spearheading last-ditch diplomatic efforts, apparently, as he heads to Moscow today to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has this report for us.
After months of steady build-up by Russian forces, we have now reached a critical juncture. The US intelligence assessment is that Moscow will have enough military assets in place by tomorrow to begin an incursion into Ukraine if it desires. Boris Johnson has now cut short his levelling up visit to the north to chair a full meeting of the UK's Crisis Cabinet, COBRA. The Foreign Secretary promised severe sanctions on Russia's rich and powerful should Moscow choose the path of conflict.
We just introduced new sanctions legislation, which is the toughest we've ever had against Russia. That enables us not to just target companies with direct effect on Ukraine, but anybody or any company that has a bearing on the Russian state.
In Lithuania, German tanks have arrived to support the NATO battle group there as Germany's Chancellor heads to Moscow today, warning there is no division between NATO allies for Vladimir Putin to exploit.
I am making it clear once again here in Kiev that Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable for Germany. We therefore expect Russia to take clear steps to de-escalate the current tensions.
Across Ukraine, many civilians are volunteering to train to defend their nation should Russia invade. People all ages, some with experience in fighting, many with none.
I'm a very peaceful person, and my everyday life skills include cross-stitching, cooking, and so on. but now I understand that we might have to stand against well-prepared people. And whatever the outcome, in order to resist these people, I must be trained at least a little bit.
And throughout Ukraine, there are mixed views on the vexed question of whether Ukraine should join NATO, an existential threat to Russia, but an option many here believe is vital in safeguarding their security.
The idea that we could potentially give up the goal of joining NATO just because Russia invades us is simply nonsense. Russia had attacked us in the past when, according to our constitution, we were a non-aligned state. That's why I don't see any point in giving up on the goal of joining NATO.
Many countries have already stated their opinion on Ukraine joining NATO clearly and precisely. Basically, it's not exactly like they're eagerly awaiting us there. That's why we should focus on better development of our economy.
These Russian and Belarusian jets are currently exercising near the Ukrainian border. They'd likely be first in ahead of any ground invasion. With his forces now pretty much all in place, the world is watching as the next move lies with Vladimir Putin. Mark White, GB News.
Well, our London reporter Alice Porter looked into what the evacuation situation looks like in Kiev and brought us this report.
Ukrainian forces preparing in case of another Russian invasion. Meanwhile, thousands of British citizens have been trying to get flights out of Ukraine after the government advised them to leave as soon as possible.
I've been in two minds about coming back because of the advice coming out by the British Embassy about the amber alert, red alert. A lot of people, a lot of students were waiting for the red alert, and it happened yesterday. Once that happened, everybody booked their tickets and left.
The Foreign Office says in-person consular assistance to Britons who remain in Ukraine will not be possible, as more than 100,000 Russian troops are currently amassed on Ukraine's border.
The danger is a very real one that the Russians will attack again, and this time not simply take chunks of territory, but might attack with missiles aimed at strategic targets, particularly infrastructure, to sow panic, confusion, and ultimately to result in the change of government.
So you're in Kyiv at the moment and you're going to be getting on a flight today out of the country. What are you hearing in terms of the situation at airports? Is it being well managed, or are we seeing some quite chaotic scenes of people quite desperate to get out of the country?
There are all sorts of rumors flying around that airlines, international airlines, may stop flying to Ukraine. And we are very anxiously watching the news. The main problem being that insurers of airlines are not willing to risk, serious security issues in the skies over Ukraine. Remember, it was the MH17 that was shot down over Ukraine in 2014.
For those who've been living in Ukraine for most of their lives, getting on a flight out of the country comes with mixed emotions.
I will feel very sad. I will feel very, shall we say, aware that there are many millions that would have left for a safe haven or refuge that do not have that chance. But I will go with a sense of responsibility to do my utmost to help Ukraine, Europe, Britain through these darkest hours that we face.
Alice Porter, GB News.
Yes, indeed. Our reporter Alice Porter talking about the evacuation situation there in Ukraine. Well, we're going to go to our inbox now, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Loads of you getting in touch. Someone's called me David Dickinson.
Yeah, somebody said, why is David Dickinson presenting with Mercy?
I mean, I'm offended. This is all natural, people.
Is it?
This is all natural. This is what happens when you do the classic Brit abroad, where you go over there, you don't move from your sun lounger, don't bother to learn a word of the local language, and just demand rum punch all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't ever tan, so can't relate. But in terms of your monologue, we've got lots of views, actually, and I like this view from Brian in Northern Ireland, who says, we heard the Prime Minister over the past few days talk about maintaining the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but he can't maintain the UK territorial integrity given the Northern Ireland Protocol. Ukraine territorial integrity is important, but the UK Prime Minister's first duty is to maintain national sovereignty. So, interesting one there, and that's...
Well, this is it. You know, we have a lot of leaders
Yeah.
who are in charge of a lot of the NATO nations who, as far as I can tell anyway, think open borders are a completely good thing, and in fact, maybe borders shouldn't exist at all. And yet, when it comes to Ukraine, we could be about to send people over there to fight and die in the name of borders. I find that very strange.
Yes, well, after the break, we'll be bringing you some much-needed good news because Dr. Christian Dunn of Bangor University joins us to take a look into new rewilding plans, restoring Britain's famous green and pleasant lands to their proper glory. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
A very good morning to you. It's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Russian Defence Ministry says they're returning some troops from the Ukrainian border after completing what they're calling training exercises. The Russian news agency Interfax is also reporting, though, that the military is continuing exercises in a number of other areas. Well, this follows a meeting between Boris Johnson and President Biden last night, who said there is still time for a diplomatic solution to avert war. The number of UK workers in formal employment rose again at the beginning of this year. The Office for National Statistics said the number of UK workers in formal employment climbed by 108,000 between December and January. Salaries rose in the last quarter, but continued to lag behind inflation, which is at a near 30-year high. World tennis star Novak Djokovic says he will not defend his Wimbledon or French Open titles if the tournaments require mandatory vaccination for competitors. Speaking to the BBC, he said it was a price he was willing to pay and that he prioritised decision-making on his body over a trophy. Northern Ireland's remaining coronavirus restrictions will be lifted and replaced instead by guidance. The rules requiring face masks in public places and the need to show COVID certificates for nightclubs will be dropped. The country's health minister will make an order revoking the rules later today. People in Wales will receive extra support to help manage the cost of living crisis. The Welsh Government says they're going above and beyond, offering a package, including a £150 cost of living payment and an extra £200 for low-income households next winter. One of the developers of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine will collect her damehood today. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert will receive the honour at Windsor Castle for her services to science and public health. You're up to date now here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Don't go anywhere. To the point, we'll be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning. It's 10:38 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys, live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, indeed. Now, fuel prices have hit a record high at pumps across the UK, tightening the squeeze for many already feeling the pressures of the cost of living. Remember those just about managings that Theresa May so famously talk about? Well, they're not managing anymore, are they?
Yes, indeed. Well, the Automobile Association reports that oil prices have hit their highest level since 2014 and are expected to climb even further in coming weeks. This has the potential, of course, to affect millions of us, as our North West of England reporter Bradley Harris explains.
These fuel increases are certainly going to have an impact for many, many people. There are over 30 million drivers in the UK, and for many people waking up, going into their car and heading off to work or to see family or friends, some people might be thinking twice before heading to the pumps. Certainly in the coming days and weeks, it'll be hard to ignore petrol forecourts showing prices of over £1.48 a litre. That's how much it was over last weekend. Last Thursday, diesel was actually over £1.51 a litre, and the AA are now saying that the cost of filling up a 55-litre family car will set you back over £81. So certainly people up and down the country who are already facing an impact on the cost of living crisis, energy bills going up. This will be an added cost for people who rely on cars to get around. Here in Altrincham, it's not the same as being in big cities such as London, where there are convenient, efficient and fast transport networks. For many people here, they have to rely on the car to get around. So as soon as the fuel prices go up, that immediately will have an impact on people. And I've actually been chatting to motorists to find out how much of an impact this is having. Let's just hear some of their thoughts.
A few months ago, we would think at weekend we'd go out for a run somewhere. It's Saturday or Sunday. Now we're thinking, we look at the weather, if there's any sort of chance of rain, miserable day, we'll say, no, it's not worth it, because when you used to travel 30 mile there, 30 mile back, fair enough. Now you do that and you look at how much it's costing you. Just don't use the car, walk or stop in.
It's having a fairly big impact as I need to use the car for work. I work as a fitness instructor and travel to different leisure centres and health clubs around the area. If fuel prices got so high, then I'd maybe have to look at perhaps not travelling as far, changing my work routine. May have to change because it wouldn't be cost effective to be travelling to these places for what I get paid for doing the classes. Or my other alternative is I'd need to look at a smaller car or a cheaper car to run.
Well, I mean, we've got a couple of cars we use to do recoveries. We've noticed a difference there. You know, what we're doing, we do the same amount of recoveries, but the fuel is we're using more fuel, it's more expensive, isn't it? So it's a tenner a week extra. We don't put that on the job. We just got to swallow that and just go with it.
Now, fuel prices at the pump are largely driven by the wholesale price of energy, which shot up recently because of tensions between Russia and Ukraine. On Monday, oil prices hit their highest level since 2014, reaching over $95 a barrel. At the moment, it's $1.48 here in Altrincham, but in the coming days and weeks to come, I think many people's eyes will be looking up to the signs on petrol forecourts, thinking twice before they fill up at the pumps.
Yes, indeed. Bradley Harris are actually reporting from what used to be my local petrol station. So
oh, really?
That takes me back. Anyway, here to talk us through these rising prices, the soaring costs, is Howard Cox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK, a campaign fighting for a lower cost of motoring for Britain's 37 million drivers. Thank you very much for joining us. This is very unsustainable. I've got some damning figures here. Bradley Harris already run us through quite a few of them. I mean, drivers are being priced out of the market, are they, in some cases?
Absolutely. You heard that lady saying that she might have to change her job, get a smaller car, all these sorts of things. This is quite common. We're getting across. Our 1.7 million supporters are saying that they are being crippled by this. And the point is, we don't understand why it's always the UK, because we're the highest tax motorists in the world, despite our campaigning for the last 12 years, getting a freezing fuel duty for 12 years. We're still the highest tax motorists in the world. And also, when you look at something like Germany, France, and Italy, they price diesel 10p cheaper than we're doing now. And then you go to Russia or USA, those prices are 70 pence cheaper. Why is the UK so much more expensive?
And looking at BP's figures for profits for last year, 2021, £9.5 billion last year. Shell made a profit of around £12 billion. I mean, when people at home who are struggling to afford to pay at the pumps hear those figures, it feels like we've been taken for fools by these companies.
You're absolutely right. I wrote a big article in The Sun about that, and it's fuel's gold. These oil companies, through no skill or brilliant management ability or marketing creativity, have been lucky. The oil prices have rocketed, and they benefited. The chief executive for Shell is benefiting to the tune of £7 million to his personal share options. It's ridiculous. It's just not right. But the government can do something about this, and one is to cut fuel duty to help motorists, because the government is getting something like 3 to 5 billion extra in VAT because of the high prices, and they could pass some of that incredible tax revenue windfall onto motorists. And the second thing is to actually introduce, and I've been on your show before to talk about this, is we got Ofgem, we got Ofcom, we got Ofwat. Why haven't we got Ofpump or Pump Watch? 37 million drivers depend on their vehicles, and yet they're taking for fools, as you quite rightly say, Mercy.
Yeah. Is there a potentially bigger picture here? I don't want to get my tinfoil hat on or anything like that, but there is a push now to stop people driving. Driving is considered very dirty, especially around London. You should all get an e-scooter or ride a silly bike. Do you think this is where we are?
Yeah, I'm afraid this conspiracy theory is coming home to roost, isn't it, Patrick? I honestly think that this is actually, there's a hidden agenda to get us off the roads. Why? No one understands our freedom. This is one of the most liberating forms of transport in the last 100 years. And we're being told, one, that, diesel and petrol are dirty, and yet they're getting cleaner by the decade. And we're being told by the end of the decade that we can't drive diesel and petrol, we're going to move into electric vehicles. One form of modal transport, when there are so many other ways to clean the environment. And what we'll be doing, with the cost of that would be trillions, the impact from the national grid, on the national grid, etc. That will be it'd be seismic, and yet it will make little benefit to the environment.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking about that. Obviously, going to hit lots of families, millions of people, 37 million drivers across the country. So really important, Howard Cox there, thank you, the founder of Fair Fuel UK. Yeah. Didn't realise most tax motorists in Europe, in the world.
It's ludicrous now. I think it's ludicrous. Also, I got slapped with a congestion charge the other day, and I've not driven anywhere near London for a while. So
well, that's concerning.
Someone's nicked my plates, I think.
That's odd. I'd look into that.
I should probably have a look into that, actually, to be fair. I just saw it, got outraged and did nothing about it. But, no, I do find it absolutely ridiculous, especially considering the fact that weren't we all told to go and buy diesel as well?
We were.
So Muggins over here went and bought himself a diesel, didn't he? And
now you're paying the price for it.
Now I'm paying the price for it. Yeah.
Well, on to something a little lighter and happier. Nature charity Rewilding Britain is offering farmers, local communities and environmental enthusiasts some funding to help them with large-scale rewilding projects. Rewilding is a process of returning areas of land, lake and sea to the wild through human intervention until they can eventually self-sustain.
Yes, indeed. And it's also a wonderful excuse for us to hopefully show you some pictures of some little hedgehogs later as well. But there's no doubt, of course, that this is rising up the government's political agenda, isn't it? The government has unveiled farming subsidies, for example. This will pay for land managers for projects that benefit local ecosystems, threatened habitats and endangered species.
Yes, well, to discuss this feel-good story, we're fortunate to be joined by nature scientist and friend of the channel, Dr. Christian Dunn. Good morning, Christian. So explain all of this to us. Explain this rewilding.
Yeah, so rewilding is a land management or a conservation practice, which is all about returning land back to a more natural state. And I say natural in inverted commas because we are trying to shift the how we're using that land to a time when there were different types of animals, perhaps apex predators, wolves and lynx and things like this. It's moving it back to a time like then, so that nature can look after itself better. That's kind of the ultimate aim, but there are lots of steps to get there, and so many of them are fantastic. It is just about making areas more nature friendly, done in the right place rewilding projects can be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and it is very, very important. Obviously it is. And I think, like we said, it is creeping up the political agenda. Do you think we'll ever actually really fully achieve it? And also, as well, is it a very delicate balancing act? Because, you know, if you reintroduce something into somewhere, you know, that has a knock-on effect. It all ties in, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this has to be done holistically as well. You have to think kind of the bigger picture, and you have to think about the whole landmass of Britain that we have. And we can't just rewild the entire area because we have different pressures. We need to produce food. We need to live in places. So we can't just rewild everywhere. And so there is a very important balance that we have to strike. And it also doesn't mean that we have to do huge areas as well. Rewilding in general does try to look at those big, huge projects, big landscape projects. But actually, we can all really, in our towns and our cities, get involved with rewilding. Road verges, for example, you know, where it's possible, we should be rewilding them, having some more wildflowers, nature-friendly corridors in our very cities, rewilding ourselves as well as rewilding the more bigger pictures, the bigger kind of landscape, like our uplands. You know,
I like
places.
I like the idea of rewilding myself. Just me, you know, wearing a loincloth and reverting back to my natural state.
That is quite a traumatic image to have in one's head.
Right, it's hedgehog time, people. Here we go. Bring up the hedgehogs. Now, I love these ones. I once rescued a hedgehog, Horatio, from a road.
You named him Horatio?
Horatio the hedgehog, yeah.
The most middle-class hedgehog ever.
Horatio, squirrels. It's squirrel time. No, one thing I do want to know is, what kind of animals would you like to see potentially introduced? I know that this isn't necessarily about the reintroduction of species that were here, but there's talk every now and again, isn't there, of things like wolves or lynx or things like that. Are you pro lynx?
In the right place, yes, of course. But I'll tell you one animal I am even more pro, and that is beavers. Beavers are fantastic animals, and we need more of them in our country. They can increase the biodiversity of wherever they go. They can store carbon. They can prevent flooding. They are brilliant. They're ecosystem engineers. They can change the landscape for the better in the right place. And that is very important. It's all about balance and in the right place. But in the right place, my goodness, let's bring beavers back to the UK.
Indeed. Hail beavers.
Absolutely, yes, fantastic stuff. I must say, no, I would enjoy to see that in the wild, I think.
Beavers, right, OK. Well, thank you, Dr. Christian Dunn there, speaking to us about rewilding. Nice, good, feel-good story.
Yes, very good, very feel-good story, that. Well, we're over there now. Hey, back. Anyway, right, before a break, let's just quickly run you through some of the stories that you might have missed.
Yes, well, we've got a little historical throwback for you. On this day in 1655, Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell, who led a successful civil war against the monarch Charles I, introduced some landmark legislation for religious freedoms.
Yes, and the law issued, there he is. Look at that geezer. A man before his time. The law issued a proclamation confirming freedom of religion within the Protectorate for Protestants, as laid out in the Constitution, providing the law was not broken. This allowed the growth of many nonconformist groups. Interesting, isn't it? You know, that's, I suppose, the increase in religious freedoms. Moving on. Elon Musk's Neuralink startup is, well, I don't know now anymore, unfortunately, it's gone. But we'll move over, I think, to Tunisian TikToker, there we go, chaos, who filmed her migrant crossing, there you go, this will get you going, and subsequent spending spree, right? And she's insisted that it doesn't look as bad as it seems. I believe we might be able to see a little video of... So what you can see there is these people on a boat. It's the most dangerous migrant route, this one. It's from Turkey, and I mean, thousands of people have died. Something like 70,000 people are believed to have been, died or gone missing. And this is the famous TikToker. She's got 100,000 followers or whatever, and they're living it up.
Yeah, well, the 21-year-old hairdresser, Chima Ben Mahmood, says she was forced to make the £1,000, 117-mile trip because of Tunisia's low wages, only earning the equivalent of £90 a month, while her fiancé, who posted his own video of their illegal crossing, has also documented their trips around Europe. It seems the pair have travelled from Italy and now looks like they've landed in Paris. It's weird, isn't it?
On tour, haven't they?
Yeah,
you know,
it just glamorises sort of making a dangerous crossing across the country seas and across borders illegally.
But it also goes something. There's a lot of people out there who go, come on, look, they're all refugees. Well, they're not all refugees, right? And recently in the channel, we've been finding out a bit more about some of the people. No, some people are refugees. Absolutely, some people are asylum seekers. Well, completely. I get that. And they deserve our help. We should be helping these people. But if you decide that you're not earning enough money in your native country and you therefore want to move to another country to earn more money, you're an economic migrant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it.
Yeah. I don't think that's disputed, personally, because you can't. That's what they are, isn't it? But I think people find it an uncomfortable truth sometimes to admit. But now, Elon Musk's Neuralink startup has admitted to killing 8 animals during its brain chip test. The company's hoping to use brain chips to allow for what it calls human-AI symbiosis.
Goodness me, so 8 chimps were euthanised after receiving the brain implant, which has led the company to be targeted by animal welfare groups, not surprised, calling for a ban on animal testing. But meanwhile, in Europe, Switzerland was set to become the first country in the world to ban animal testing, but after putting it to a public vote, nearly 80% of the country voted to keep the practice, not a nation of animal lovers.
Yeah, I found that quite odd when I saw that this morning. It did make me wonder what's going on there.
But, I mean, I'm a massive hypocrite with all of this stuff, right?
Just generally.
All right, leave it out. I'm massive, it's nice to be back. I'm a massive hypocrite with this stuff because, you know, I give it the big, I couldn't possibly kill anything. I couldn't possibly, but present me with a raw slab of steak and I will demolish it. You know, I'm happy for somebody else to do the killing and the cutting up and the cooking.
But is that hypocrisy? I don't think so.
I don't know. It's not, you know... I am against animal testing, but then maybe we'd miss it. Maybe if it wasn't for animal testing, we wouldn't have a lot of
we wouldn't have a lot of products, would we?
But
testing on monkeys...
products. Like you went straight for. I've got this lovely moisturiser.
Medical products, but monkeys is another... Rats.
There's
a hierarchy. Well, yeah, sadly. I mean, who doesn't?
Okay, fair enough.
You wouldn't animal test on a dog, on your pet dog, let's put it that way.
We do animal test on dogs. You know, beagles, renowned for their animal testing. Yeah, they are, seriously.
Well, let's take you to some of your views now after that ramble on our part. Carl says... Fantastic monologue, Patrick. I agree with everything you said. It's important we look at the wider global issues and how Western culture has become so self-destructive. He thinks you tied the facets together very perfectly. It is becoming self-destructive for the reasons you mentioned, but also, you know, I know it's an overused word now, but wokeness. I mean, the West is internally combusting, isn't it, by all the ideologies people are adopting. It's just completely destroying the fabric of society.
I think we're eating ourselves alive. You know, what must China and Russia really think? Well, we can see what they think of us because they're trying it on, aren't they, all over the world now? And it's because, you know, while we're busy toppling statues and doing things like that, you know, they're actually kind of cracking on. And I worry that we're going to wake up one day and we'll just be in the middle of a new, not say new world order, that sounds a bit, you know, but a bit like that, really, and we're not going to be anywhere near the top of it.
Yeah, I think that's already happening. But keep all your thoughts coming into us on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break.
Hello. Some wet weather around today, and things are going to stay very lively with our weather through this week. A couple of storms on the way. Storm Dudley through Wednesday and then Storm Eunice on Friday. Ahead of that, we've got this weather system bringing rain today, and then another low arrives tonight. The winds start to pick up, and then the next low, this is Storm Dudley arriving through Wednesday, mostly affecting the northern half of the UK. More on that in a moment. First of all, let's get back to today because wet weather affecting East Anglia and the southeast. A soggy Tuesday here, but turning a bit brighter across the Midlands and Wales this afternoon with sunny spells. There will be showers across Scotland with some snow in those showers, mostly over the hills. Temperatures, well, single figures for most, but double digits across the south. Not feeling all that pleasant, though, with the rain across the southeast. That scoots away through this evening, and then it turns drier for a time before the next weather system brings rain across the country through this evening. Snow across Scotland, again, mostly over hills, above about 200 or 300 metres. There could be some snow building up through the night. That weather system's almost out of the way by Wednesday morning. It's a blustery day on Wednesday everywhere. And then the next batch of rain comes in from the west. And again, some of this rain is going to be heavy. and the winds continue to strengthen. Some good spells of sunshine across eastern England during Wednesday morning. But that next weather system, this is Storm Dudley. The winds really picking up across Northern Ireland, western Scotland through Wednesday afternoon, and then strengthening further through the evening across parts of northern England also. So we do have warnings in place. An amber warning covering southern Scotland, the north coast of Northern Ireland and northern England. Broader yellow warning in place as well. So this is Wednesday afternoon into the overnight period. The amber warning in place, and as Dudley clears away then through Thursday, another low arrives. This is Storm Eunice, which is likely to bring problems and disruption across the southern half of the UK on Friday. Bye for now.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki. And of course, we're live on your TV, your radio and online. And we're here with you for another hour with the top stories of the day, expert guests and lots of views.
Yes, so make sure you get in touch with your views on our usual email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll get to those throughout the next hour. But first, let's give you the latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's just gone 1 minute past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, the Russian Defence Ministry says they're returning some troops from the Ukrainian border. It's after completing what they are calling training exercises. The Russian news agency Interfax is also reporting, though, that the military there is continuing exercises in a number of other areas. Ukraine's foreign minister said they would believe in the claims of de-escalation only after it sees Russia's pull-out. In Britain, the Prime Minister is leading a Cobra emergency meeting. The former UK ambassador, Sir Mark Lyle-Grant, told GB News there is still scope for diplomacy.
And the longer that there isn't an invasion, as it were, I think the better the chances that there might be a diplomatic solution to this current crisis. We are entering, though, a very sensitive window because the Beijing Olympics are coming to a close at the end of the week. The Belarus-Russian military exercises are coming to a close, and the Russians do have all the necessary troops, but also logistical backup for an invasion if they wish to take that course.
The number of UK workers in formal employment rose again at the beginning of this year. The Office for National Statistics said the number of UK workers in formal employment rose by 108,000 between December and January. Salaries rose in the last quarter of the year, but continued to lag behind inflation, which is at a near 30-year high. Northern Ireland's remaining coronavirus restrictions will be lifted and replaced instead by guidance from today. The rules, therefore, requiring face masks in public places and the need to show COVID certificates to get into nightclubs will be dropped. The country's health minister will make an order revoking the rules later today. People in Wales are going to receive extra support to help manage the cost of living crisis. The Welsh Government says they're going above and beyond by offering a package, including a £150 cost of living payment and an extra £200 for low-income households next winter. Wales's Finance Minister says the government is more than doubling the equivalent support provided by the UK government. Immigration rules on care worker jobs have been relaxed. The profession of care worker has now been added to the government's list of occupation shortages. Well, this is designed to help migrants get work visas to fill jobs where there are significant staffing shortages. The social sector has struggled to attract and retain staff. World tennis star Novak Djokovic says he will not defend his Wimbledon or French Open titles if the tournaments require mandatory vaccination. Speaking to the BBC, he said it was a price he was willing to pay and that he prioritised decision-making on his body over a trophy. The 34-year-old, who's not vaccinated against coronavirus, distanced himself from the anti-vax movement and said he had had vaccinations as a child. A senior officer admits racism is a problem in the Metropolitan Police. The force's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Bas Javid says people who have racist views are working in the Met. He said, though, the organisation is not racist and people are working hard to root out the problem. The government has outlined more details over plans to protect leaseholders from cladding costs. They want developers and manufacturers to pay for replacing dangerous cladding in order to protect renters. If they don't address and pay to rectify cladding safety issues, the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities say they could be prevented from building in the future. A study has found potentially toxic levels of pharmaceutical drugs in a quarter of the rivers across the world. The National Academy of Sciences surveyed more than 1,000 sites, including the Thames in London and the Amazon in Brazil. Well, the research measured the presence of 61 pharmaceuticals that pose a risk to freshwater habitats and wildlife. One of the developers of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine will collect her damehood today. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert will receive the honour at Windsor Castle for her services to science and public health. The jab has been used by more than 2.5 billion people in over 170 countries. Bristol Zoo Gardens in Clifton will shut its doors for good in September, having been open since 1836. They've been struggling with a lack of footfall over recent years. All the animals will move to a wildlife park in South Gloucestershire. Over its opening years, it's helped save 175 species from extinction through its conservation programmes. You're now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Let's return, though, to the point.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV and your radio. Here's what's coming up in the final hour.
Yes, well, some taxpayer-funded diversity chiefs are being paid more than the Prime Minister. We'll be discussing this with our Culture and Social Affairs editor after a short break.
Yes, OK. A US special prosecutor has suggested that Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign paid an internet company to access Trump's servers at Trump Tower, as well as the White House for information on Russia. This is interesting stuff, isn't it? The chair of Republicans Overseas UK joins us to discuss these allegations and what this could mean for Trump's potential 2024 run.
And finally, as Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau authorises the Emergencies Act, truckers protesting COVID vaccine mandates could have personal bank accounts frozen. This is amid reports journalists are also being removed from Twitter.
Yeah, massive final hour, that, isn't it? I think it's really important to focus on what's going on Canada as well, because I think this would just be so many ramifications for other countries as well. But keep those views coming in, GB Views at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on releasing violent criminals.
convicted sex offender who's serving a life sentence for attempted rape and indecent assault has gone on the run from HMP North Sea Camp in Lincolnshire, an open prison. Paul Robson went on the run on the weekend, just weeks after he was moved to the open prison after being denied parole 5 times. The police have said this, and I quote, "If you see Robson, please do not try to approach him or try to apprehend him yourself." Why is that? Well, because they say, and I quote, "He presents a particular danger to young women and children." Well, thanks for stating the obvious. The man was sentenced to life after he broke into a woman's house, tied her up, put a pillowcase over her head and held a knife to her throat as he attacked her. The man has a history of violent sex attacks on young women. According to reports in the Oxford Mail, Robson was sent to prison for assaulting a 12-year-old girl in 1988. After an early release from prison, he then abducted and assaulted an 8-year-old girl in 1990. He was released early again, then went on to approach 2 young girls aged 9, and then was jailed again in 1996 for attacking a woman. It was in 2000 when he was finally handed a life sentence for yet another sickening crime. Robson, in my view, has proven that prison is no deterrence to him, that he exploits his freedom to commit more crimes. What on earth is the parole board doing sending a man who was declared a menace to females by the sentencing judge, who the police deem a risk to the public, to an open prison? And the Ministry of Justice should be ashamed of itself for approving this man's transfer to the open prison. In explaining the decision to send him there, a spokesman for the parole board said this, and I quote, "A move to open conditions involved testing the prisoner's readiness to potentially return to the community in future." Well, Paul Robson has well and truly, and very unsurprisingly, failed that test, and the public pays the price. All we can do is cross our fingers, hope and pray that Robson does not have the opportunity to harm anyone else. And above all else, I hope this is a lesson to the parole board and the Ministry of Justice that releasing monsters like this, who have been sentenced to life in prison for a reason, is playing Russian roulette with the public's safety.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many points to this. It makes me want to bang my head off the desk, by the way, when you see these things, because you said there, and it's the public who pay the price.
Yeah.
And it is the public who pay the price. There are now women and young girls who are at risk because this guy was allowed to be released, open prison. Obviously, he absconds.
I find it just shocking. I mean, first of all, I find it shocking that somebody can ever be given a life sentence, even though it was with a minimum term of 9 years initially, and then somehow end up actually in an open prison. That in itself is bizarre to me. But when somebody so blatantly has a repeated record of, not being deterred by going to prison, in fact, coming out and almost immediately going on to commit similar crimes, violent crimes, the crimes he committed, he's ended up being sentenced to life in prison. And it's just shocking to me that they approved this man's release to an open prison.
I want much more scrutiny of our parole board and who they are and what they're up to, frankly, because you remember as well, they were all for releasing John Warboys.
Yeah, and Colin Pitchfork as well, and he's obviously went back a couple of months later.
And it's ludicrous, and it is the public. It's the public who are on the front line of this stuff, and we do it. It's not just actually with these kind of criminals as well. We do it with terrorists. We do it with people, and then we act surprised and we act shocked. I would find it, as a member of the parole board, very difficult to look. This guy, by definition, we don't know where he is. He's on the run. Let's just say, hypothetically, he goes and commits something like any of the crimes he's committed before. You're a member of that parole board. How do you look that woman in the eye? How do you look her family in the eye,
Yeah, I'm not willing to ever take that risk personally. So I think violent criminals should always stay in jail where they belong. But now, moving on to something else, there's been a lot of heated debate about the creation of diversity and inclusion roles and whether they do more harm than good. But placing that aside for a moment, new government transparency data has revealed that the highest paid diversity officer in the public sector, that is the highest paid taxpayer-funded salary, is on par with the Prime Minister's salary.
Well, it's been revealed that Network Rail's Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Lorraine Martins, is earning between £160,000 and £164,000 per year, whereas Boris Johnson's pay packet It's a measly, a meagre 157,372 quid. I wonder how they calculated that 372 quid at the end as well. Just round it up.
Yeah, we actually have some details about all of that. So we can tell you in a second. We're joined now to discuss this by our Culture and Social Affairs editor and host of the discussion on Sundays at 3 p.m, of course, Inaya Falarin Iman. Inaya, why does Network Rail need a diversity chief?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And I think that many people are going to be asking that same question as well. And not least actually paying them in the top 1% of earners in the entire country. And I think a lot of people are starting to worry when we have a kind of cost of living crisis, when ordinary people are being squeezed, that many government institutions and civil service bodies are finding the money to pay really obscene amounts of money to people that it remains to be seen exactly what their role is. Now, we might say that they are overseeing different strategies when it comes to hiring and recruitment and making sure that different considerations are put forward, such as accessibility or whether or not the welcoming of various different train staff, for example, is making sure that it's inclusive. But is that really worth over £150,000? And I think that we've been seeing a lot of these Freedom of Information Acts over the last few months, finding out that many civil service institutions are paying diversity officers in so many different fields. We saw the Foreign Office paying hundreds of thousands of pounds to Stonewall, and now we're seeing the same thing with many of these race-related diversity officers. I think it's very right that we ask questions about whether or not the taxpayers' money is being spent correctly.
It always cracks me up a bit, really, the idea that, for me, and there are a lot of outlets out there that do this, the admittance, right, that you need a diversity officer, you need it. The inference there for me is that if we didn't have one, we'd be racist, or if we didn't have one, we couldn't help ourselves, we'd be discriminating against people. Doesn't that actually point to a problem within themselves more than it does necessarily with wider society?
Well, I think it is very interesting that a lot of the diversity narrative that we have within society seems to, what I describe as, see the malevolent in the incidental. And what I mean by that, it often seems to find racism and prejudice where oftentimes there is none. So oftentimes, interactions between people that might be a slight is seen as a microaggression, which is a manifestation of an all-encompassing underlying racism, which actually creates all of these structures and within these institutions to then root out racism. And it can oftentimes actually create more harm than good. Now, undoubtedly, there are problems within some institutions. I think undoubtedly considerations about how different things might be interpreted by different cultural backgrounds and ethnic groups. I think that's good. I don't know if you need to necessarily hire someone at £150,000 a year to do that. I think that all of us should be broadly aware about different backgrounds and things like that. I think that's just being sensitive to the recognition that we live in a diverse society. And I think most people are well-meaning and good faith and are more than happy to consider how different things affect different people. And I think a lot of these structures that are being put in place, I actually think open the door to quite ideological and political motivation. So actually, Guido Fawkes, in their report of this, actually found that this woman was often engaging with liking and retweeting tweets that were very hostile to Boris Johnson and the government. Now, of course, she might have her own political views, but that should be a private matter. And you really do wonder if someone's in higher pay than the Prime Minister in a role that is publicly funded, whether or not they should be so overt with very politicised viewpoints.
And I don't quite understand it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, this role exists, right? They're being very well remunerated for it. We are paying for that. And yet they're also saying that this is, in many cases, quite a horrible country with a lot of disadvantages and this, that and the other. There's a bit of a hypocrisy there, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that many people mention is that when it comes to a lot of these diversity, is the one thing that we often don't find is diversity of thought. And so there's been many reports by the Telegraph and the Daily Mail very recently of many ordinary people who, within their own diversity forums, put forward an alternative perspective and are often investigated for racism or investigated or even threatened with sacking if they say the wrong thing when it comes to various fashionable ideas about gender or say the wrong thing when it comes to disagreements about Black Lives Matter. So oftentimes, actually, it's a very narrow understanding of diversity. It's not actually diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of class. It's often race, gender, and sexuality, and all other forms of diversity are put through the wayside.
Well, Inaya, thanks so much for joining us to discuss that. Lots of people, I think, would be very annoyed at that. They don't need to be earning those what's the word I'm looking for? Not extortion. Yeah, not that one. Exorbitant. I don't know. But they don't need to be earning that amount at all. But yeah, Inaya Falarin Iman there.
Excessive.
Yeah, no.
No, okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Let's go to some of your views. We've been talking about Paul Robson, who I believe we actually have a picture of. He's the criminal who escaped from HMP North Sea Camp in Lincolnshire on Sunday. We showed you that image yesterday as well, and I believe he's still missing or at large.
It's important to say as well, sorry, the police have said if you do see this guy, don't go anywhere near him, right? You know, look, it's important that you know who he is and what he looks like so that you kind of read it.
Well, I made a few points earlier on about parole boards, and they should be ashamed of themselves when they release people who obviously have a proven record of continuously reoffending every time they're committing violent acts and are imprisoned for it. Well, Paul says our parole boards are full of legal professionals. As members of the public make up juries, why do they not form a large proportion of parole boards too? Which I think is an excellent point, actually, because I do think I'm starting to see a big disconnect between parole board decisions and the general feeling of the general mood of the public.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I mean, maybe they get a bit desensitised to it because their job, presumably, is on a daily basis to decide between some of the most heinous criminals and this, that and the other, and who to release and who's not released. And yeah, OK, maybe we don't necessarily always hear about the ones they do decide to keep locked down forever, but you do see a lot of these cases, you know, people like Colin Pitchwell or something or the other, and it keeps coming back to it for me. Would you let them live in your spare room? Would you let them live in your daughter's spare room? Would you let them live next door to you or near your children? Well, if the answer to that is no, then why are they living next to me? Why are they living next to Mercy? Why are they living next to your grandma? You know, I find it absolutely bizarre. You know, if the answer to their question there is no, I would not like this guy living next door to me, then don't release him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keep your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And the word I was looking for already, exorbitant.
Oh, that's a good word.
Yeah,
it's always a good word.
Anyway, after the break, Donald Trump has proclaimed he was right after a US special prosecutor claimed that Hillary Clinton's presidential team paid a firm to spy on him, while Republican Overseas UK Chairman Greg Swenson will join us after this short break to discuss this.
Hello. Some wet weather around today, and things are going to stay very lively with our weather through this week. A couple of storms on the way. Storm Dudley through Wednesday and then Storm Eunice on Friday. Ahead of that, we've got this weather system bringing rain today, and then another low arrives tonight. The winds start to pick up, and then the next low, this is Storm Dudley arriving through Wednesday, mostly affecting the northern half of the UK. More on that in a moment. First of all, let's get back to today, because wet weather affecting East Anglia and the southeast. A soggy Tuesday here, but turning a bit brighter across the Midlands and Wales this afternoon with sunny spells. There will be showers across Scotland with some snow in those showers, mostly over the hills. Temperatures, well, single figures for most, but double digits across the south. Not feeling all that pleasant, though, with the rain across the southeast. That scoots away through this evening, and then it turns drier for a time before the next weather system brings rain across the country through this evening. Snow across Scotland, again, mostly over hills, above about 200 or 300 metres. There could be some snow building up through the night. That weather system's almost out of the way by Wednesday morning. It's a blustery day on Wednesday everywhere. And then the next batch of rain comes in from the west. And again, some of this rain is going to be heavy, and the winds continue to strengthen. Some good spells of sunshine across eastern England during Wednesday morning. But that next weather system, this is Storm Dudley. The winds really picking up across Northern Ireland, western Scotland through Wednesday afternoon, and then strengthening further through the evening across parts of northern England also. So we do have warnings in place. An amber warning covering southern Scotland, the north coast of Northern Ireland and northern England. Broader yellow warning in place as well. So this is Wednesday afternoon into the overnight period. The amber warning in place, and as Dudley clears away then through Thursday, another low arrives. This is Storm Eunice, which is likely to bring problems and disruption across the southern half of the UK on Friday. Bye for now.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Good morning, it's just gone 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News, live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
We are indeed. Now, big story this. In the United States, a US special prosecutor has suggested that Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign was spying on former President Donald Trump during his campaign and presidency.
Yes, big accusations there. Special counsel Robert Durham alleges that Clinton's camp paid a company to access servers at the Trump Tower and at the White House, mining for links between Donald Trump and Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's just classic stuff, this, isn't it? Former President Donald Trump has called this a scandal far greater in scope and magnitude than Watergate. It is, in a way, a digital Watergate, if true, saying that the Democratic candidate's alleged actions would have been punishable by death in a previous, stronger version of America. Is that holding back?
Strong words there. Greg Swenson is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, and he joins us now to discuss this. Thanks for coming in to speak to us. How credible are these allegations? Do we know yet?
Well, they're fairly credible. I mean, you know, is it absolute fact? There's been no admissions yet, so, you know, possibly, you know, we need to be patient. But this is coming from the Durham report. I mean, this is not some speculative, aggressive prosecutor in, you know, southern Manhattan. You know, this is Durham, and he's been investigating this for years now. So, I mean, I think there's little doubt that the Russia collusion hoax has been completely disproven. That's, you know, that's old news. But I think this is just more reassurance. But what it does is it implicates the Clinton campaign. I tend to believe it because we've seen this already, you know, with the dossier, you know, the Steele dossier, that's been proven to be funded by the Clinton campaign. So these accusations look pretty deliberate and pretty straight to me.
But let's look. We don't know yet if it's true or not. Whatever, fine. But if it is, right, the brass neck of these people to drag Trump before numerous inquiries, this, that, and the other, all the while, allegedly, doing essentially what they were accusing this guy of doing. And doesn't that speak, when Donald Trump spoke about draining the swamp, isn't this what he felt about? Because these lot must have felt so secure and so safe and so protected that they thought, we can just get away with this.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that there's always been bias in the mainstream media in the U.S., but you can live with liberal bias, right? It's baked into the formula if you're a conservative or a Republican. But when you see the national security agencies, when you see the FBI and the CIA involved in this, that's really troubling. And then, of course, the blatant ignorance of campaign laws. I mean, you mentioned digital Watergate. I mean, this was a break-in by an opposition party, not only during the Trump campaign, but also at the White House. So it's really troubling, and it just goes, it's ironic that now, the very people, both the campaign as well as the media, that piled onto this story that started in Slate. I mean, not exactly credible, information, and now they're completely ignoring this news. It's amazing. It's
incredible.
Yeah, and it proves again that, Trump, who, enjoyed using hyperbole, to say the least, he exaggerated, but he exaggerated on things that really didn't matter. Who cares how many people were at his inauguration?
Yeah.
But when he called out issues that were very obvious to many people, he was much more candid and honest about it than any other
Yeah,
president.
and that's what people liked about him. And on that note, I mean, what does this mean for Trump now? Because this plays right into his hands. This is a sort of I told you so moment for him, isn't it? What are his prospects looking like, do you think, for the next presidential run?
All indicators are that he's considering it, strongly considering it. The reason he hasn't come out and said it, 100% is, he wants to win. He'll only run if he knows he can win. If the election were tomorrow, he would clearly win. I mean, I could win the election. It's not saying much, but
you look quite presidential, actually.
Anybody in this room could run and win. If the election were tomorrow. But things can change in 3 years. We don't know who the Democrats are going to run. So I think Trump will wait to see, who they have. Can he win comfortably? With a nice cushion, and then he would run. But whoever does, whether it's Trump or a Trump-supporting candidate, they will win. I'm very confident in that.
There's a lot of negative noise around Donald Trump, of course, and some of it justified, some of it not. And yet there's a lot of noise around the Clintons, isn't there? And yet they seem to it just brushes off them. When you look at what has been a very long period of time, the Clintons have been right at the heart of global politics. Yeah. They're not squeaky clean this
30 years. No, not at all. And, they've been quiet lately. They obviously aren't commenting on this news. But, they are very powerful, to say the least. And looking at this situation on the Durham information, obviously not good news for the Clintons, especially for Hillary.
Yeah, so just give us a timeline maybe of what we can actually expect from here. So obviously these are allegations at this point. What happens next, and what could be the outcome of this?
Well, I would be very surprised if there weren't some serious indictments. I think on the top of the list, you have to look at Jake Sullivan, who's the national. I mean, it's amazing to think that this guy is the national security advisor to the president. Given his role in the Clinton campaign, and watching the clips of him from 2016, it's just amazing. So for him not to have known about this, with the confidence that he had in making those accusations, that it would surprise me. So I think we have to be patient. It's taken so long just to get this information out from Durham. So, it might not be overnight. He's being very, very deliberate and taking his time on this thing. But, go ahead.
Just a quick one, because we're going to go to headlines very, very shortly. Just wanted to get you while we've got it, the Ukraine situation. Biden, obviously, the clock is ticking as far as he's concerned, and I'm talking about Ukraine now. What do you think about America's approach to it? I'm surprised that he hasn't maybe gone to meet Putin in a neutral location. What do you think?
Yeah, look, he had this hour phone call on Sunday. It doesn't sound like it was very productive. The problem with Biden is, credibility. He's rolled over on peace through strength, which, President Trump sort of brought back from the Reagan days. He's rolled over on that. He made concessions to Putin right out of the gates without getting anything in return. conceding Nord Stream 2, and now he's threatening to take it back. But that was a major mistake, and also rolling over on the missile agreements that Trump backed out of. So he's made these concessions already. Then you had Afghanistan, which was a complete disaster. So that's just given Putin more power as well as China. So it doesn't surprise me that Biden's looking weak right now. He's looking weak just about on every metric and every issue in the U.S.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Greg Swenson, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to talk to you. Greg Swenson, there, Chairman of Republicans Overseas.
And the next President of the United States, potentially as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, from one president to a prime minister, Canadian PM Justin Trudeau has invoked the nation's emergency powers to combat the Freedom Convoy protesters. We look more at this after this news update from Rosie Wright.
It is 11:33. Good morning to you. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister is leading a Cobra emergency meeting over the situation in Ukraine. The Russian Defence Ministry says they're returning some troops from the Ukrainian border after completing what they're calling training exercises. The Russian news agency Interfax is also reporting, though, that the military is continuing exercises in a number of other areas. Ukraine's foreign minister says they would believe in the claims of de-escalation only after it sees Russia's pullout. The number of UK workers in formal employment rose again at the beginning of this year. The Office for National Statistics said the number of UK workers in formal employment climbed by 108,000 between December and January. Salaries rose in the last quarter of the year, but continue to lag behind inflation, which is at a near 30-year high. Well, tennis star Novak Djokovic says he will not defend his Wimbledon or French Open titles if the tournaments require mandatory vaccination for competitors. Speaking to the BBC, he said it was a price he was willing to pay and that he prioritised what he puts into his body over a trophy. Northern Ireland's remaining coronavirus restrictions will be lifted and replaced instead by guidance today. The rules requiring face masks in public places and the need to show COVID certificates for nightclubs will be dropped. The country's health minister will make the order revoking the rules later today. People living in Wales will receive extra support to help manage the cost of living crisis. The Welsh Government says they're going above and beyond, offering a package including a £150 cost of living payment and an extra £200 for low-income households next winter. One of the developers of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine will collect her damehood today. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert will receive the honour at Windsor Castle for her services to science and public health. You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Don't go anywhere. To the point, we'll be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's 11:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News. And, of course, if you don't know by now, we're live on your TV, on your radio and online.
Yes, I'm just looking at the screen there, and when you look at me, I remember somebody sent us a picture once saying that our background looks like you're X-raying me, like scanning
Oh, yeah,
me.
look.
Yeah.
There we go. Right, anyway, we're actually live on the news now, so we should probably do that.
Yes. Now, a serious story, actually. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has invoked an Emergencies Act to combat the Freedom Convoy protesters currently occupying downtown Ottawa. The Freedom Convoy consists of truckers and their supporters who are protesting against a vaccine mandate for cross-border lorry travel. It's now been widened to a broader criticism of Trudeau's COVID policies as a whole, which are semi-dictatorial.
This is insane, right? Let's just call it what it is. This is insane. The Emergencies Act will last for 30 days, yeah, and the rest, and includes the power to prohibit public assembly, travel, and the use of specific property. Now, the Canadian government could even freeze personal bank accounts. In fact, they've said that they actually might do it. They possibly will, you would imagine. They've done everything else. They're booting journalists off Twitter, for goodness sake. And, yeah, and here we go. I mean, Canadian journalists have actually been in touch with GB News now, having been removed from Twitter. So here's one of them.
Yes, well, Mark Slipinski is a journalist at Toronto 99 and joins us now from Canada. Mark, am I right in thinking you've been suspended from Twitter?
Yes, that is true. Me and my colleague that were reporting on the protest in Ottawa were suspended from Twitter at the same time. And that happened on Saturday.
And why? I mean, have you been given a reason as to why Twitter decided to suspend you?
The exact reason was ban evasion, which is funny because I don't have any other accounts. So I suspect this is censorship because it wasn't just me. There was quite a few other accounts that were taken off.
Right. So GoFundMe, that's the one, isn't it? They've basically bowed down to Trudeau and said that they were going to remove all of the funding, reimburse the people who donated to these truckers. Now Twitter's getting involved. I mean, one can only imagine who else jumps on the back of this. What's Justin Trudeau's motivation for this? He thinks that if people don't report what's going on, then it'll go away. Is that right?
Something like that. I think he wants to paint the protesters in a negative light. He wants to make them look violent. He wants to make them look like terrorists, and that just isn't true. It's been a peaceful protest 99.99% of the time, and everything I saw was peaceful, and everything I recorded was peaceful. And I think there's a lot of people out there, especially a lot of liberals, that just don't like that.
Do you think this protest is becoming futile now? Because it's very clear that Justin Trudeau, or Trudeau as Patrick calls him, is doubling down on these protesters, and he clearly is willing to use any means at his disposal to stop them. I mean, is this something that should embolden the protesters, or should they actually just say, look, this is not going to work?
Well, I believe that protests should always be peaceful. As for what the protesters should do, I have to say, even myself, I'm a bit surprised at the resolve of the protesters. The fact that they drove across the country to go to Ottawa in the first place was surprising, especially the numbers. And it's really hard to say what they're going to do, but I have a feeling based on what I've seen that they're ready for the long fight, and they're going to dig in. They're going to do whatever they can to get what they want. Is it likely? It's hard to say. There's been some premiers of the provinces that have change the rules, but as far as Trudeau, it's really hard to say. It depends on how much pressure they can put on him and continue to put on him.
Should Canada be proud of a leader that's still so scared of this virus?
I don't think so, and I think a lot of people aren't proud of him.
Is there? Because look, any leader really, and I think Boris Johnson was doing this at the height of the pandemic we had over here when he was imposing, large restrictions. Let's just put it that way. And they look at the opinion polls, right? And that's something they do regularly. Is there a vast majority of people in Canada who are in favour of what Justin Trudeau, or however you pronounce his name, is doing?
I think you have the name right, but my understanding is the last time I checked, it's 2/3 of Canadians actually want to lift the restrictions. So I think the public support for the easing of restrictions is actually lifting, whether it's from the protest or whether people are just tired of the pandemic in general is hard to say, but that's the last I read.
So what's your plan now? I mean, are you going to... Is it a temporary ban that you have, or do you not know what's going on? And, I mean, what is your feeling on it now? Because I would assume that, you know, as a journalist, you're quite angry about this because it's basically censoring you. It's stopping you from doing your job.
Yeah, it's definitely very frustrating. I still have access to my blog page, so that's not too bad. But as far as my Twitter page, yeah, I spent a lot of time working on that. I spent a lot of time building that up, and to see it disappear sort of overnight is troubling. And I am appealing it, and I've actually started a petition to get me and my colleague back on Twitter. But I'm not too optimistic about that, and I might have to consider going to another platform altogether.
Yeah, I'm not surprised as well. Is Justin Trudeau everything that he says he's not? Is he just the smiling, quite boyish-looking, some would say good-looking face of dictatorships?
I think that's a great way to describe him, for sure.
All right, fair enough, then. Good stuff. Mark, thank you very much for that. Oh, look, no, seriously, do you think this is... It's almost like art in motion, isn't it? It's almost like, you know, let's put this guy up, right? He looks like a pin-up, you know, he's got this boyish charm and he's this long flowing hair. And actually, is it all just quite literally skin deep, which is possibly the wrong word to use when it comes to Justin?
I think so. I think his looks are sort of deceiving because he doesn't, you know, he does have that very sort of pretty look, or a lot of people find him pretty, but at the same time, when you really read between the lines and you watch what he's doing, it's, you know, he's just like any other dictator, and he's going in that direction. He's not quite as bad yet, but definitely going in that direction when you look at it.
Taste for it, hasn't he?
Yes, well, Mark Slapinski, thank you for joining us, journalist at Toronto 99, and has been suspended from Twitter along with his colleague over his coverage of the protests. So, as he said there, it sounds a lot like censorship. Mike's got in touch. He says Justin Trudeau's best described as a petulant child. So that's
that's Mike's view. That's Mike's view.
Yeah.
That's Mike's view. Anyone who thinks that these powers are anything to do with COVID is wrong. This is Tony. I think the implication there that, as I think a lot of people maybe are potentially coming round to, is the idea that there are potentially a lot of leaders out there who've got a bit of the taste for this thing. You know, they like the daily briefing. They like I don't want to say like the control, but maybe the control. It makes them feel like a leader, doesn't it? And I can see the logic there, too.
Ardern is another one.
Oh, goodness gracious me.
Who seems to very much be enjoying the powers that COVID has been able to give her. Lots of views coming in here in terms of the parole board. Earlier we talked about a convicted sex offender who is supposed to be serving life in prison, and he's on the run at the moment. Graham says measures of performance for the parole board should be published, e.g. reoffending rates for early release, sentencing, etc. So maybe pitting the results, basically, like what's the word I'm looking for? Key performance indicators or whatever, KPIs for the parole board should be things such as reoffending rates. I think that's not a bad idea.
I think it's. I think that's absolutely spot on. I think I see no reason why not. You know, we have a right to know how effective our parole board are at keeping us safe. And if they're not effective at it, then they need to change. You can't just hide those figures.
Leslie says the people who decide to release violent, dangerous criminals early or send them to open prisons don't seem to realise that these people are cunning and manipulative. They'll say anything to achieve early release. Whoever thought that criminals tell the truth needs their head looking at.
Needs their head looking at.
Yeah, naivety. I think naivety is a good way to sum that up.
I agree. And I think as well, the words open and prison are not two that you would necessarily want together.
Absolutely
really.
not. What is the point?
Well, I can see for some really low level stuff, you know, ingratiating them back into the community.
It just seems like free accommodation to me.
Well, it's you know, a lot of them get. That was probably how this guy got out. I imagine it is, isn't it? I think you can have day release or whatever, or you can go and do a bit of work in the local community and come out. And I can see the logic, do a bit of litter picking or something. But, you know, not if you are a violent rapist.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one more view. Steve says, outrageous fuel prices at the pumps in Northern Ireland. I'd rather push my car than pay these prices. The government needs to step in, especially given the profits declared by the likes of Shell and BP. And that's actually something we are going to be covering.
Seamlessly done.
Yes.
The transition on
Did you see what I did there,
this doesn't
darling?
just happen, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, fuel prices have hit a new record high at the pumps across the UK, ultimately tightening the squeeze on customers. The AA reported that oil prices hit their highest level since 2014 and are expected to climb further in the coming weeks. But how does this impact on people's spending and ability to move around? Well, let's hear from our North West of England reporter, Bradley Harris.
These fuel increases are certainly going to have an impact for many, many people. There are over 30 million drivers in the UK, and for many people waking up, going into their car and heading off to work or to see family or friends, some people might be thinking twice before heading to the pumps. Certainly in the coming days and weeks, it'll be hard to ignore petrol forecourts showing prices of over £1.48 a litre. That's how much it was over last weekend. Last Thursday, diesel was actually over £1.51 a litre, and the AA are now saying that the cost of filling up a 55-litre family car will set you back over £81. So certainly people up and down the country who are already facing an impact on the cost of living crisis, energy bills going up. This will be an added cost for people who rely on cars to get around. Here in Altrincham, it's not the same as being in big cities such as London, where there are convenient, efficient and fast transport networks. For many people here, they have to rely on the car to get around. So as soon as the fuel prices go up, that immediately will have an impact on people. And I've actually been chatting to motorists to find out how much of an impact this is having. Let's just hear some of their thoughts.
A few months ago, we would think at weekend we'd go out for a run somewhere. It's Saturday or Sunday. Now we're thinking, we look at the weather, if there's any sort of chance of rain, miserable day, we'll say, no, it's not worth it, because when you used to travel 30 mile there, 30 mile back, fair enough. Now you do that and you look at how much it's costing you. Just don't use the car, walk or stop in.
It's having a fairly big impact as I need to use the car for work. I work as a fitness instructor and travel to different leisure centres and health clubs around the area. If fuel prices got so high, then I'd maybe have to look at perhaps not travelling as far, changing my work routine. May have to change because it wouldn't be cost effective to be travelling to these places for what I get paid for doing the classes. Or my other alternative is I'd need to look at a smaller car or a cheaper car to run.
Well, I mean, we've got a couple of cars we use to do recoveries. We've noticed a difference there. You know, what we're doing the same amount of recoveries, but the fuel is we're using more fuel, it's more expensive, isn't it? So it's a tenner a week extra. We don't put that on the job. We just got to swallow that and just go with it.
Now, fuel prices at the pump are largely driven by the wholesale price of energy, which shot up recently because of tensions between Russia and Ukraine. On Monday, oil prices hit their highest level since 2014, reaching over $95 a barrel. At the moment, it's $1.48 here in Altrincham, but in the coming days and weeks to come, I think many people's eyes will be looking up to the signs on petrol forecourts, thinking twice before they fill up at the pumps.
Yeah,
well, our reporter Bradley Harris there, talking about the price of fuel at the moment, which is exorbitant.
Aye, there it is. Yes, indeed. It is. But all joking aside, this is crippling people. Crippling people. There are a lot of people who were just about managing before the pandemic, got hammered by the pandemic, and now they can't afford to fill a car. It's nuts.
Yes, but now before we end the show, let's just run you through some other stories that we noticed that you might be interested in. The Mauritian flag has been raised over the Chagos Islands, a British Indian Ocean territory. The islands have been the subject of a dispute between the UK and Mauritius. The Foreign Office has said this: the UK has no doubt as to our sovereignty over the British Indian Ocean territory, which we have held continuously since 1814.
Yes, well, I mean, it went on to say that Mauritius has never held sovereignty over the territory, and the UK does not recognise its claim. However, Mauritius has gone as far as saying that Britain is occupying it illegally. Look, I think we can all see what's about to happen here. War with Mauritius, right? You know, this is going to be the Falklands of our time, this. And it's not before time. There's only one logical way around this. We have to boycott all of Mauritius's goods. We can't... Don't shop Mauritius. Don't shop Mauritius. That's what we have to do.
What does Mauritius give us?
I mean, great holidays, to be fair.
There is that.
Yeah. Anyway, right, well, that's some stuff about Mauritius there. No, it is interesting, though, because actually there's something like 97% of people on this island are of British or American heritage.
Yeah.
I suppose that's because we... Well, did we colonise it? I don't know. It's a chicken and egg situation.
Yes, now to New Zealand, where authorities have had to up the ante on their anti-vaccine mandate, protesters, after a loop track of Barry Manilow's greatest hits failed to move them along. So they turned to a repeat of James Blunt's You're Beautiful and Baby Shark instead. But alas, the protesters remain, with hundreds still gathered or camping outside the New Zealand Parliament, calling for an end to the vaccine mandate. So they tried to clear off what a tactic that is. I mean, that would definitely clear me away.
Hang on a second. We used to do something similar when we were... Torturing's a strong word. Interrogating people in Iraq and Afghanistan. You'd bombard them in their cell.
With James Blunt.
With like, music. It's a form of torture. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. You know, the New Zealand government has now resorted to belting out Baby Shark.
I mean, Baby Shark is really up there with one of the most annoying things ever. Do you remember that crazy frog thing?
Yes, I? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that was the baby frog of my day.
Yeah.
I mean, Baby Shark of my day.
Yeah.
Annoying frog, and then people had it as their ringtone and everything, didn't they?
God, yes.
Crazy frog.
That's the issue, is that's in my head now. But no, I'm sorry, but this isn't okay, this stuff. You can't just have people there protesting and you bombard them with, and let's be honest, horrific music in order for them to go away. That's just bad. Anyway,
yeah.
No, well, whatever.
Poor James Blunt, I suppose.
I think James Blunt actually volunteered it. He was kind of joking. James Blunt's Twitter feed, by the way, is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, he does mock himself a lot, isn't he? He doesn't take himself too seriously. But now the Agatha Christie saga continues to take some turns and twists after Rebecca Vardy was forced to turn over messages allegedly about Colleen Rooney. Rebecca's legal team did successfully keep Mrs Vardy's PR rep Carolyn Watt out of the case, but more evidence is still being collected and analysed.
This story, I can remember when it first broke. I was sat in the office and it just, that post went up, wasn't it? And it's Rebecca Vardy's account. And it was like, whoa, this is mad. Anyway, despite the setback, Colleen's legal team say they are still confident of winning. What do you reckon Jamie and Wayne ever get together and just go, they're still at it, those two?
Probably.
You know, they're still at it. When will it end?
I mean, the amount of money they're all splashing on it is ridiculous. I just think, just get a grip and sort it out.
So, yeah, it's pocket money for them, though, isn't it? And that's the thing. But then, you know, you've got court time being taken up by this stuff. And I imagine it's driven a wedge through the WAG community. Goodness gracious
me. The WAG community.
Oh, gosh, you can't go to Piccolinos in Alderley Edge these days without, you know, you've got to be in one camp or the other camp. I mean, it's, goodness me.
Yes, Paul Wags. Now, let's finish off the show with some of your views.
Yes.
Adrian says, no high-risk Schedule 1 offender should be in an open setting. I wouldn't mind having a look at the risk management plan agreed by the prison and his probation officer. He says people can literally walk out of the North Sea Camp prison, which is where this man is, Paul Robson, and go into the community and even work every day, which, again, begs the question, what's the point of the prison if you can just go about your daily life and leave and go
I think it does. I think it's important to say, look, I think it does depend. It depends a bit on what kind of criminal you are, doesn't it? But I mean, with this guy's track record of rampant sexual assault.
Not good, is it?
No, not good. And again, would you want them living next door to you? If the answer to that is no, maybe they shouldn't be out. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody. I've loved my first day back in the hot seat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But make sure that you don't go anywhere. That is it for now for us. But up next is the wonderful Gloria Di Piero with The Briefing.
Hello. Some wet weather around today, and things are going to stay very lively with our weather through this week. A couple of storms on the way. Storm Dudley through Wednesday, and then Storm Eunice on Friday. Ahead of that, we've got this weather system bringing rain today, and then another low arrives tonight. The winds start to pick up, and then the next low, this is Storm Dudley arriving through Wednesday, mostly affecting the northern half of the UK. More on that in a moment. First of all, let's get back to today, because wet weather affecting East Anglia and the southeast. A soggy